Commander-in-Chief, Allied Expeditionary Force.
I have complete confidence that the soldiers, sailors, and airmen of the United Nations will demonstrate that an aroused democracy is the most formidable fighting machine that can be devised.
Eisenhower was there and saw it happening. He had seen the buildup of the American military to fight World War II.
In this war, more than any other in history, we are on the side of decency and democracy and liberty.
He believed very deeply in the necessity for World War II and felt that Nazism was a terrible tyranny. And he brought this conviction and drive to defeating Nazi Germany.
People waited for this moment, the culminating victory, the end of the war.
We were on top of the world. We were the only unwrecked major power on Earth. Europe was bleeding to death. Japan was gone. Those paper cities had all been burned up. So what are we doing?
At 2:45 in the morning, August 6, 1945, Colonel Tibbets takes the Enola Gay.
It is an atomic bomb. It is a harnessing of the basic power of the universe.
The United States bombed the Japanese city of Hiroshima on August 6, 1945, and 3 days later, they detonated another atomic bomb on the city of Nagasaki.
What has been done is the greatest achievement of organized science in history.
I can remember in the Pacific when the word spread that the bombs had been dropped. 99.9% of us were delighted because we'd been convinced that if Japan was not hit by nuclear weapons, 1 million of us would be killed. Drop those bombs and they will surrender. Well, they were trying to surrender all that summer, but Truman wouldn't listen because Truman wanted to drop the bombs. Why? To show off, to frighten Stalin, to change the balance of power in the world, to declare war on communism. Perhaps we were starting a preemptive world war. Eisenhower hated the dropping of them and thought it should not have been done.
We just thought war was terrible enough as it was. I cannot trace evolution in my dad's thinking. He was complex. He was a 5-star general, but he was never a military fanatic, never. One night in July of 45, that day, the Secretary of War had told my father about the development of the atomic weapon, atomic bomb. We were sitting up in his bedroom, and he said that his own first impression, his own emotion had been to be feeling down low. He wished we hadn't invented it.
In the background was the growing conflict between two great powers to shape the post-war world. Already, an iron curtain had dropped around Poland, Hungary, Yugoslavia.
You see, we had to fight communism wherever it was in the world. So a decision was made that the United States remain militarized permanently.
We lack the weapons to defend ourselves. Build, prepare is the cry. Quickly, the government springs into action and initiates a gigantic rearmament program. A program designed to make America the arsenal of democracy.
From that moment on, the American empire was in every corner of the earth.
In Burma and Iceland,
we were going to maintain dominance, not just of Europe, and not just of Japan, but of the entire globe.
Oh, gee, I wish that I could be with you tonight. Gee, I wish. And gee, I know that everything will be alright. Be alright. The crickets are singing a love song.
What are we fighting for?
Fighting for continued freedom. That's the only way we're going to have it, I think.
Why do we fight? I think that I honestly don't have an answer for it.
It's the people who start the war who know what they're fighting about.
I think we fight for ideals and what we believe in, so I hope that's what it is.
Today, we don't have a broad-based American feeling about why we're fighting in Iraq. People's confidence in the United States is not what it was 15 years ago. It's not what it was during World War II.
Yesterday, USA, precious celluloids such as the Why We Fight orientation films, familiarizing our soldiers.
You know, it's interesting, Why We Fight was actually the title of a series of World War II films that were done by one of the great directors.
Master of the art of motion picture entertainment, Frank Capra.
The Frank Capra films, even back then, were propaganda to kind of build up a war fever.
Americans fighting.
But given that it was during a global world war, there were a lot of reasons that Americans embraced.
We're fighting for liberty, the most expensive luxury known to man.
Today, if you went downtown to my local town and you asked 5 people why we're fighting in Iraq, you'd get 5 different answers.
Why do we fight? I'm not quite sure, but I think it's for power and control, for greed.
I'm not sure if we're fighting for the oil or not. We could be, we could not be. The government has more knowledge than I know.
I think everybody has a different idea why we're there, and a lot of people think we shouldn't be.
What we're seeing is a disconnection of our American foreign policy from the citizen, from the average American citizen.
Why do we fight?
Oh, I wish we didn't. I wish we didn't. Sometimes you have to, though.
This is one of my favorite pictures of all time, smiling with his 2 teeth. Man, Jason. What can I do for my son's memory? I'm not a millionaire. I can't build schools and libraries. I'm just a regular cop living on a pension. I want to be able to do something so that hopefully one day I can go over to my son's grave. And I can go over to my son's grave and tell him that I've done something in his memory that hopefully will be a step in preventing another attack like that.
The bomb is designed to be delivered inside a target. So
my expertise is in explosive technology, and so are a lot of my colleagues here at Indian Head. When the Pentagon called, my position then was the head of what we call the payload team. A bomb, it's the nomenclature for bomb. I find it sometimes amusing when people ask me, what do you work in? And I would say explosive, and they would. But our mission was to quickly weaponize what was called a penetrator. It basically was a big bomb engineered to enhance its blast effect inside confined structures such as tunnels, caves, etc.
We're going to attack somebody. We're going to bomb someplace. There's no question about that. The question is, where are we going to do it and why?
Do you think that after an adversary gets nuclear weapons is a better time to engage that adversary than now without?
Iraq continues to flaunt its hostility toward America and to support terror. This is a regime that has something to hide from the civilized world.
The invasion of Iraq in 2003 is to a very considerable extent about repositioning the United States as the country that must be obeyed. It's an easy way to send a signal to the planet that the United States is in charge and it's going to do what it wants, and anybody who defies the United States will be punished.
The decision to attack Iraqi leadership at the opening salvo
It was a bold move. It was a new way of making war, and technology was able to provide our leadership that opportunity.
We had received this new weapon called the Enhanced Guided Bomb Unit 27, and it was like the new candy at the candy store. We needed something that was going to give us the capability to strike through the weather and not worry about having to bring the bombs home.
The whole of the city is still lit very brightly, but nobody's moving on the streets whatsoever. It's like everybody here is holding their breath.
We really didn't know who was there and who was going to take the blow of what we were about to do.
Both Colonel Tuman and I probably had our suspicions about who it was.
We've gotten some indications that it may be Sons, it may be Saddam himself.
Assassination, people sometimes think with precision weapons that maybe you can now assassinate people from very high altitudes. I mean, golly. First of all, if it's a fixed target like a building, you have the time to understand it, its location. The next hardest target is one that moves around, and the single hardest target of all is a human being.
Sometimes before you can bring about democratic change, you have to remove the obstacle to democratic change. You have to remove Saddam Hussein because there's no hope for democracy with Saddam there.
The point in many ways for these guys wasn't just to topple Saddam, it was to transform the Middle East. They want to take the U.S. military and go in and shore up American interest in the key area of the world. And that's their vision. They want to spread democracy around the world on the point of our bayonets.
تتمنين العراق أن يصبح مثل أمريكا؟
والله شقد لك يجوز أكو ناس ترتاح أكو ناس ما ترتاح. ما أريد مثلا يعني أريد مثل أمريكا مثل شوارعها حدائقها بنائها هيك أريد.
احنا من البدايه واقفين ضد امريكا، لكن اكو ناس اللي كانوا يرحبون بامريكا هو قال صدق ديمقراطيه وصدق امريكا تحررنا.
في الصراحه كيفنا كل احنا صفقنا. شو نصيح؟ عاش بوش، مات صدام. احنا جاي نصفق عاش بوش، مات صدام.
I think most Americans don't want to police the world. But I think most Americans understand that if we don't at least help police the world, then no one's going to.
Where the debate and controversy begins is how far does the United States go, and when does it go from a force for good to a force of imperialism?
People complain a lot about American arrogance and American power, but the great threat for the future is not American power and American strength. It would be American weakness and American withdrawal.
They do believe that this is not only for the long-term benefit of the United States, but it's for the long-term benefit of everybody else as well. We'll bring them American values, prosperity, peace, all the rest of it. But the way we're going to do that is to take over, even more than we did at the height of the Cold War. After the Second World War, the United States literally divided the world up into commands. And some American officer was responsible for every region of the world. There was this domino theory. If any of these places fall to communism, then the next place and the next place and the next place will fall as well. And the next thing you know, they're in Missouri.
Once upon a time, your hometown was safe. But not now. It is possible for a rocket to strike your home right now, today, right now. And what defense remains? Strength. Strength, ready if we need it.
When my dad first became president, he came in at the real beginning of the thermonuclear age.